Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my regular Wednesday series where we talk about some aspect of making music with MuseScore. And usually we have a particular topic we talk about and explore things involved in that topic. And the topic that I've chosen for today is one that has special relevance for people who are going through the basic music theory course. We did a project, and some people are still working on the project, which is fine. The project having to do with what is sometimes called Plainchant, and the idea of music that is, well, definitely an older style of music, but one in which there's not necessarily specific rhythms being notated, and the type of notation that was actually used historically pre-Renaissance is very different from the type of notation that we use today, and yet there's ways of notating Plainchant in kind of modern notation. And so we're just going to kind of explore these things because, well, A, it's useful if you're actually trying to do Plainchant, but also I think you'll find some of these techniques useful for other types of music as well. So thanks everyone coming by here and checking in. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So by the way, Heist, you got a question about tuba parts, and tuba parts don't normally transpose. That's something to be aware of. We normally, we talk about a B-flat tuba, but we don't actually transpose the music for them. If you want to, yeah, that would be a whole aside. That's something we could discuss in another session about working with transposition. If you want to try to have multiple transpositions, but basically the short answer is you can't copy and paste. So, oh, do I not have my captions on? Wait a minute, I do. Yeah, they're on. Oh, do you mean for the video? If you're, just in case anyone is ever wondering, the video itself, if you're using Chrome has a built-in caption facility, which is pretty cool. If you go into the accessibility options for Chrome, you'll find an option to turn on captioning of videos, and it will caption all videos live in real time, which is a pretty cool thing. I've tried it out and it works great during these live streams. It can actually transcribe me talking, like sometimes it almost feels like it's ahead of me. It's crazy how efficient it is. So anyhow, let's go ahead and talk about entering some of this music here. And I'm going to use the piece that I used as my demonstration. It's just a little piece that I put together quickly as a demonstration of how to work with this Plainchant. So I'm going to go ahead and first show you an example of the kind of thing that we're talking about. So I posted a couple links earlier, and this is the kind of notation that I am talking about here as far as the modern notation. So what you can see is there's not bar lines, right? There's just sort of an indication of faster moving notes and longer notes, and then also some sort of in-between notes, that are not long, not short, they're not slow, they're not fast, they're half-assed. That's the joke. So anyhow, we're going to be looking at this type of notation, and notice here we've got several lyrics all being chanted to that one pitch. So we're going to look at how to do that as well as other ways of notating this. I am also going to show you, though, the other link that I posted shows the historic type of notation that looks more like this. This is how it would have been notated sort of pre-Renaissance or even in the early Renaissance. And it's well, for one thing, it's only 4 lines on that staff. This funny looking thing up front here is actually a clef. And other than that, there's lines and spaces and notes on lines and spaces, but they work a bit differently. So MuseScore doesn't support this type of notation directly, but we can actually come pretty close to achieving it. And so I'll show you some of those techniques. But first, I want to focus a little more on just this, which is going to be much more usable for most people. So we're going to talk about how to enter like a whole lot of notes. notes in one measure like this with no bar lines, right? And there's not even a time signature displayed, no bar lines. So let's take a look at how to do that. I'm going to come over here in MuseScore and create a new score. So Control N for the new score. And because this type of music is almost always it's monophonic, right? It is not music for. Let me just get my other. Just want to get my other system viewing here so I can be, monitoring if any issues going on. So it's not SATB music. It's not polyphonic music. It's not music with multiple parts. It's a unison type of music. Now there might be situations where there's call and response between, say, the priest and other people, the congregation. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say. I'm going to go ahead and say create from template treble clef. You could just as easily have said choose instruments, voice, vocals. In fact, what the heck, I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to choose alto for my voice just because I can. I suppose this would be more typically male voice, wouldn't it? Oh, well. So let's go ahead and talk first about what is already different about this than my model. So my particular piece doesn't have a key signature, so it's not going to need the key signature, but it is going to need to not have a time signature. So let's talk first about not having the time signature. I'm going to right-click this staff. First of all, I could select the time signature and press V to make it invisible. I can totally do that. But if I ever have time signature changes in here, I'd have to hide them all. I want to show you that you can also right-click the staff, go to Staff Part Properties, and here you can just turn off time signatures. And now there's no time signature at all, nothing visible or invisible. It's technically still there. If I click the clef and hit Alt-Right, I think it is now selected. Time signature, there it is. You don't see anything, it's there, but it's like completely not visible. All right, so I've done that. The next thing I want to do is enter my first phrase of music. So this is what I'm working from, and I know you can't really see this, but that's okay. You'll be seeing it as I go. I'm holding it up to the screen, and it actually looks like I'm doing a pretty decent job of letting you know what it looks like here. But you're just seeing a tiny thumbnail, so it's not very useful. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start entering the notes. So I haven't done anything fancy to hide bar lines or anything. And in fact, I could do that, but I'm gonna do that a little later. All right. Let's just do it now. Let's go back to Staff Part Properties. So right click the measure, and this time I'll just turn off bar lines. And now my bar lines have disappeared. The reason I was hesitant is I kind of find this awkward looking, seeing all those empty measure rests with no bar lines between them. It freaks me out to see that. And so I was going to not do it till later, but whatever. It really doesn't matter. The important thing to realize is MuseScore is still going to think in terms of measures. So even though we're going to have one long measure with a lot of notes in it, it's still going to be basically one measure. So I'm going to enter my entire first line of music into this measure. So I'm going to go into note input mode. And the way I'm going to pull this off, there's a number of different ways of doing this. And I'm going to show you, a couple different of them. I'm going to go in note input mode here. If I kind of long click on that icon, or you click on that tiny little button in the lower right of the button, the lower right of the icon, you'll see a tiny little button there. It drops down this menu, and I'm going to switch to insert mode. When I'm in insert mode, MuseScore isn't going to just fill up the measure and move on. It's going to literally insert notes. It's going to insert beats. It's going to increase the length of that measure as I type my notes. So my notes are going to be D, and not in that octave, but down in this octave. And let me turn volume back up. Can you type the lyrics before there's notes? No, there would be no way to do that because there would be no way for MuseScore to understand which notes are going to go with which lyric. You got to get the notes in first so that MuseScore knows where the lyrics go. There's no facility to do that. However, there is an interesting plugin that I'll demonstrate at some point. We've got a little work to do before it's really functional. Do I have it installed? I think I don't have it installed because it's not really functional yet. But there's one called Lily Pond Lyrics that just needs a little bit of work before, yeah, it's here, but it's not really working. So I'm not going to show you now, but it's something that would let you type lyrics into a dialog box and then hit a button and have those lyrics kind of automatically assigned to the notes after the fact. So once that plugin is a little better, a little more functional, we'll talk about that. So I'm in insert mode, and notice when I inserted that D, it's now showing, it's not showing a measure rest anymore. It's actually showing 4 beats worth of rests here. And here, the fact that the bar line isn't there is perhaps confusing things, but there is an imaginary bar line right here. So there's still 4 beats of rest. And now I can keep typing in more notes. It was a D, A, D, E, F, G, and then it was a long note that I call a whole note. So I'll enter it as a whole note. And then I had some quarter notes. A, G, A, F. Ooh, what have I done? I'm not looking at what I'm doing. I entered a bunch of whole notes, so let's undo all that. Press 5 and try that again. Da, 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 and then my long note, F. At this point, that's as much as I'm going to want to put on my first line. That's basically the first line of the poem. It's actually 2 lines of a Shakespeare poem. So what I want to do now is I'm going to select, so see, this is all one measure, including those rests there. I'm now going to hit enter to add a break there. So now I have a break there, and I'm going to select these rests, because I don't need these rests anymore. I'm going to select those rests and hit Control Delete. So those rests are now gone. And now I just have the notes that I'm actually going to want. Now I can go ahead and add my lyrics. So it's take those lips away that so sweetly were forsworn. All right, there we go. So that's my first line of music. I could enter the whole rest of the piece this way, but you get the idea. I just used insert mode so that I could enter all of those notes without having to think about the rhythm. And yeah, so this is definitely, it is definitely the case that in chant, you would be more likely to want to do the sort of thing you're talking about, entering lyrics and then figuring out where notes go, because it is not rhythmic in the traditional sense. To write lyrics, oh yeah, I didn't really explain that. So let me do that. Let me do the next measure here. So I pressed 5. I went to note input mode by pressing N, and it still remembers that I want insert mode. So it still remembers that. So I'll type E, F, G. Oh, and the G was a longer note. You can make that note longer by pressing Shift W. So the note I just entered, if I press Shift W, it makes it longer, and I just keep pressing it until it's as long as I want. Ah, you know what? Thank you, Victor. In case I have a crash, let's save this thing. Yes, that's an excellent, excellent idea. So, you should always be saving your work normally, because, you know, MuseScore has a sort of autosave backup facility, but, you know, you're expected to save your work normally, which for people who come from a world of mostly iPhone apps, the idea of saving your work and giving it a file name might seem a little foreign, but if you're used to computer programs, it's kind of the norm. So let's go ahead and save this thing here. And I'm going to call it what it is. It's take those lips away. That's what it's called. So I've entered some notes. I'm now going to go back into note input mode and continue entering my notes. So 5 for quarter note. Is the break of, and then a long note, day, and then short notes, lights that do mislead the, and then I want a long note, so I'll press 7, morn, and then control down to drop it an octave. I'll hit enter to put in my line break. I will again get rid of that extra rest there. So the question was how we're going to write in the lyrics. I click the note and then Control L gives me a cursor here to start typing lyrics. On a Mac, anytime I say control is how it works on Windows or on Linux or on Chromebooks. On a Mac, anytime I say control, just mentally substitute command. So I typed Control L, and now I type and those, and I'm just pressing space. Eyes, comma, I think. I didn't write in my punctuation, but we'll worry about that later. The break of day, and then lights that do mislead. Now, mislead is 2 syllables, so I type the first syllable, and then I type my hyphen, and that moves on to the next syllable. Mislead the dawn. Can you set the font size before entering them? Yes, you can set it before or after. Of course, right now I'm zoomed out. This is actually a very good font size right here. But if I want to change the font size for my lyrics, I'll come over. There's a couple ways of doing it, but I'll select one, and then I'll go to Properties, and then you'll see it says 10 point. Let's increase that to 12 point. And then notice it just did that one lyric there, but if I then click the ... menu and say save as default style for this score, boom, now they're all 12 point. And now if I type more lyrics, they'll also be 12 point. So I did that by selecting one lyric and then going to Properties, but you can also go to Format, Style, and then down at the bottom here, Text Styles. And then you will see lyrics odd lines and lyrics even line. This is so you can have different fonts for the odd and even lyrics. It's a fairly common convention to go normal font, italics, normal, italics, normal, italics, especially when you're dealing with translated lyrics, so that the italics might be the translations underneath, there's a facility to have different formatting for the odd versus the even lines, but I'm only entering one line, so lyric odd lines. If I go to that, I could set this however I want before I start entering the lyrics if I feel like that's useful for me. So this is the process of entering these notes. So the basic idea here of getting the kind of modern notation of getting these notes in with some long notes, some short notes, that's all very straightforward once you know about that insert mode. And notice that the icon still has that plus next to it. That's reminding me that I'm not in insert mode. I'm in what's called normal mode. Like right now, if I click, it's not going to insert any notes, but the icon has changed to let me know that if I now click that icon, I am now in insert mode. Insert mode is like a special variant of the regular note input mode. If I ever want to go back to the regular note input mode, I can select it over here again by saying step time, default step time. That's the normal note input mode. But I'm going to just live here in insert mode for a while longer. So let's talk about some other things that I might want to do here. The next line is, well, let's just say that I wanted to put a bunch of lyrics to one note. If we look at that example that I started with before, we had one long note with a bunch of lyrics on it. Let's talk about how to do that. So the type of note that is typically used for that, let me go back again, sorry. The type of note is this thing with the vertical bars next to it. It's referred to as a brev or a double whole note. And Christopher, you're asking about keyboard commands to switch between step and insert. So here's like a sort of annoying thing. There is a shortcut to go to one of the other modes, repitch mode, Control-Shift-I, but there's not a shortcut for insert. So what you would have to do if you were trying to do this with keyboard only is navigate to the toolbar using like, I'll use Shift-Tab and work my way back there. So I've Shift-Tabbed my way to that button, and then I think I press space, and that will open up the menu, and then I can start navigating through it. So you have to navigate to the toolbar and then hit space to open up the menu, and then you can use the cursor keys to navigate through. You can define keyboard shortcuts, though, for insert mode if you want. Now, you don't need to use insert mode. So I'm now going to switch. As long as I'm doing this, I'm going to switch back to default mode, and I'm going to show you that I can insert notes without insert mode. I'm going to type some notes. I'll type a C and a D and an E, and now I'll go back to the D, and I want to insert a note in front of that D. I will insert, I don't know, an F. If I type an F right now, I'm now back to step time mode. If I type an F right now, it replaces the D, right? However, I'm going to undo that. If I press Control-Shift-F, that inserts a note. Control-Shift plus the letter name will insert a note without needing to actually switch into insert mode. So if you only want to insert a few notes here and there, Control-Shift letter name is a great way of doing it. If you're basically entering an entire piece of unmetered music, insert mode is probably easier. So you kind of have a choice of either of those methods. There's actually other methods still. I frankly don't tend to use either of those methods much myself. What I typically do is I select a bunch of measures. Like, let me select, say, I'm just going to select, I don't know what that is, like 6 measures I've selected. And now I'm going to go to Tools, and then Measures, and then Join Selected Measures. And this has now created one long measure. Now, you can't tell that because, again, I've hidden the bar line. So you know what? I'm going to turn bar lines back on because I think I want to see the bar lines until I'm ready not to. So I'm right-clicking a measure, Staff Part Properties, and I'm going to turn bar lines back on so you can get a better sense of what's happening. You can now tell that I've now created one big, long measure. Now, is it long enough? I don't know. I just guessed. I guesstimated and selected a few measures and said to join them. And then I can start entering some notes. And then if I end up with not enough, well, I can join more to it. Or if it turns out I've joined too much and I've got extra rests left over, I can delete them. So I typically just do that. I join measures. I select more than I think I'm going to need, and then I join measures. So, Karen, good. Glad to see you made it. So let's talk now about that long note with the multiple lyrics underneath it. So let me go to note input mode here. And so I'm going to select that duration. Now, by default, you don't have that brev. Remember that brev was that whole note with the vertical bars on either side, this guy here? The brev is not on the toolbar by default. So I know the keyboard shortcuts. I always talk about 4, 5, 6 for eighth, quarter, half. Well, 7 is whole note, 8 is brev. So if I type 8 and then an A, I get my brev. See the whole note with the double bars on either side. Sometimes it's done with double bars like that. Sometimes it's single bars. It actually means the same thing. So that's how you enter the brev. It's basically the keyboard shortcut 8. But if you want it on your toolbar because you're going to use it a lot and you don't want to remember keyboard shortcuts, we can add buttons to the toolbar here. I can click the gear icon at the far right of the toolbar, and you'll see that all these durations are listed with icons next to them. Some of them have the open eye, meaning that icon is visible. Some of them have the closed eye, meaning that icon is being hidden. So I can come down here and find the brev, which is called double whole note here, and open the eye. And now the brev is there on the toolbar. So you don't need to know the shortcut for it. So now let's talk about entering multiple lyrics onto a single note, because that happens a lot in chant. It's a common way, rather than just entering a bunch of the same quarter note. This would be, but my kisses. It would just be, we would notate it today as a bunch of quarter notes or eighth notes or whatever, but the traditional notation for this is a long note with a bunch of lyrics underneath it. So if I click that note and write Control L and then try to say but and then hit space, it's not going to move on because there's no more notes. Let me enter some more notes here. Again, if I have the word but and I hit space, it's going to move on to the next note, or if there's no more notes, it's just going to do nothing. And I wanted to get the whole phrase, but my kisses. So I'm going to press Shift Space to go back here. And now instead of pressing space, I'm going to press Control Space. Sorry, Control Space. Control Space is the magic shortcut that adds a space within the lyric. So if you want to put multiple lyrics on a single note, that's how to do it. So but, my, and then Control Space, kisses. And now I have that entire phrase, but my kisses, on that one note. So this is great, except for one thing. Lyrics normally are centered under notes, and that works just fine for normal lyrics. But if you try to put a whole phrase centered under a note, it looks bad. So I want to make sure that this one is actually left aligned. So I've selected the lyric, and now under Properties, I'm going to look down here for alignment, and I'm going to click the left align button. And now I get the lyric left aligned with the note. Now it's left aligned in such a way that the left edge of the lyric is centered under the note. I feel like that's probably not ideal for what we want here. If I look at the original version, you can see that they've aligned the edge of the lyric with the edge of the note. So it's still thinking about the center of the note, but it's left aligning the text. I'm just going to select that text, and I'm going to use Control left arrow to move it. Nope, that's too far. I'm just going to use left arrow by itself and just move it until it's, seems to be about lined up. It's, by pressing the left align button, it at least doesn't center anymore, but it does make it be a little offset. It's offset by half the width of the note. So I just use the left arrow to move that lyric. So that's how you can do that aspect of chant. Let's talk about a few other things. One other thing that often happens in chant is, this version that I was showing you here is showing you stems for these notes, but it's actually pretty common to not show stems, just use note heads. So if I want there to be no stems anywhere in this music, I can right-click that staff, go to Staff Part Properties, and I believe stemless is somehow an option in here. Do you see it in here? Maybe I have to go to Advanced Style Properties. Advanced Style Properties. Stemless, there it goes, right there. So now I have this look, which is, maybe a little more how I want things. You get to decide, it's your music, how you want to do this, or, maybe it's not your music, maybe you're copying an actual chant and you're trying to reproduce someone else's notation of it, then there you do that. So Christopher's asking about melisma. So melisma, when you have multiple notes on one syllable, is underscore. So let's look at that. I'm going to go ahead and enter some more notes here. D, C, B, A, G, and now I'll go back to the D, and I'll type, what's our word going to be? It's going to be 4. So I'll type Control L and type the word 4, and then I'll type an underscore, and that moves the cursor to the next note, and then I just keep pressing underscore. And as many times as I press underscore, it will extend a melisma line under all those notes. Now, I do want to observe something about that. Let me undo all that. When I pressed underscore the first time, let's take a look. Let's look a little carefully at what's going on here. Right now, I have the note D with the word for underneath it. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. This is MuseScore being really quiet. So I'm going to go ahead and open the mixer. I'm going to open my mixer, and I'm just going to change that sound from Muse Sounds to MS Basic, because then I don't have to worry about the sound being quiet anymore. There you go. All right. So yeah, that was bugging me a little bit too. So what I have here is the note D and the word for underneath it. If I double click the word for, then it's in, I'm in edit mode. If I now press the underscore, then the cursor has moved on to the next note, the C, but there is no melisma line being displayed. And that's actually, that's a little confusing, but we don't really have a melisma yet, because a melisma by definition is more than one note. So melismas would never involve actually entering more lyrics here. It would always involve the next lyric being another note yet. So you would never only have to type underscore once. If there's a melisma, you're always going to type underscore twice, and then the melisma line appears. Probably at some point they'll make a little fake melisma line appear on the first time you press underscore, so you don't get confused. But just know that if you're creating a melisma, you're going to have to press underscore twice anyhow, because there's going to be 2 or more notes involved, and the melisma line will appear. Now, Allison has asked a really good question here, because I have this in the back of my mind the moment I made those things stemless. Stemless note, and her question is, well, if you're going to make the note stemless, how can you tell the difference between semibrevs and minims, or in U.S. English terms, whole notes and half notes? Well, let's look at this. Yeah, they're similar but slightly different, right? The whole note here has a thicker oval, and it kind of leans to the left a little bit. And the minim has a thinner oval, and it leans to the right. Now, this isn't universal. Every font does this a little differently, but every font will draw the whole note in some way bigger than the half note. So as long as you're not needing to make super fine distinctions where people have to go back and forth between whole notes and half notes and quickly tell the difference, you're probably pretty safe making it stemless. The context will help, but okay, if you're going to use both, then probably don't make it stemless. And I think that's why this example doesn't, because it wanted to make that distinction. A lot of music like this would not have 3 different note values. This has 3 different note values: the quarter note value, the half note value, and then the brev, or double whole note value. But the double whole note value is really easy to tell the difference here, because it's got those vertical bars next to it. So, they've got 3 different notations here, but they could have gotten away with making it stemless because they don't have any actual whole notes, any semibrevs that would more likely be mistaken for the half notes. So yeah, you're absolutely right to be concerned. So Christopher, if your syllable is on 5 notes, it's 5 underscores. Because think about this. If you have if there is no melisma at all, you have to press space once to move to the next note. If there's a melisma, you're not going to just press space or underscore or whatever. You're going to press once, because that just moves to the next note. If there's a melisma over 2 notes, you're going to have to press it twice, because the first one just takes you to the second note, and then the second press is what takes you to the third note. So if you've entered a note, the first press of underscore moves you to the second note, but now you're ready to type a lyric there, and you don't want to type a lyric there. You want the melisma there. You're going to have to press underscore again to get to the third note. So you'll always press melisma as many times. You'll press underscore as many times as there are notes in your melisma. Since we're on the topic, I want to mention that if this word had not been for, But for teen, we don't use underscore, we use hyphen. But the same thing applies. So if I select this thing, if I want to put 14, I'll enter my lyric by typing 4, but then I'm going to press hyphen 4 times. 1 to move to the next note, 1 to move to the next note. That's 2 so far, 3 to move to the next note, and then 4 to move to the next note, and then I can type teen. So you're going to press hyphen as many times as you want to advance notes. So yes, there you go. So so that's a good question, or not question so much as comment from Bruce about being able to access chat on iPad. My belief is that it should be possible, but it might not be obvious, and I should try it. Maybe someone else has tried it and can confirm either that no, it's not possible, or that you've found a way. I do know that Android recently started supporting live streams, and just yesterday started supporting courses also. So like my basic theory course as well as the MuseScore course are now accessible both on iPad, iPhone, and on Android. But chat on the iPad, I you know what? Can I do this really quickly? Can I whip out my phone and find that out? If I go to the Circle app, oh, that's one thing. Maybe you have to be on the Circle app rather than using just your browser. That's possible. I'm not sure, but I don't know my way around this app because I just don't use it that much, and so I don't know for sure how this is going to work. But yeah, I'm not gonna. I since I don't know what I'm doing here, I think I'm. Oh, there's the link. Hey, here's me. Okay. At the bottom. Yeah. There we go. At the bottom of the screen here is a bubble I see on the right. And there's my chat. So if you're using the Circle app, and now I'm going to turn this thing off because it's echoing. If you're using the Circle app, then on the bottom right, there will be a little bubble with 3 dots in it, and that's how you can access the chat. What I don't know is if you try to access any of this just using your browser, if that will allow you to access the chat or not. That's another thing that, well, what the heck? I'm just going to try to find out because I should know this. So I will say join the stream. Join as participant. I see the same thing here in my browser. I see a little thought bubble looking chat button, the lower right. There's the chat. So it does work one way or the other. As for the name of the Circle app, okay, I need to kill this thing. Give me a second because it makes an echo. The name of the Circle app, I think, is called Circle Community, but it's this guy here. See, do I have it centered enough that you can see it? It's a C and a blue. It's a blue circle. Blue circle with the white letter C. Circle Community sounds right. Yeah, that's the one. Because there are a couple different companies named Circle. One of which, unfortunately, was wrapped up in that whole big bank disaster failure a couple weeks ago. The other Circle was tied up in that. As far as I know, this one is not. So, yeah, that was a good thing to do because I've always wondered about accessing this stream from the phones because that only relatively recently became possible. So I'm happy to have gone through that. So we've now looked at these different aspects of creating this sort of traditional type of notation, but I do want to talk a little bit about the non-traditional notation as well. And the non-traditional, the more traditional is really the way I should describe it, the older style. This older style here in which we have this like We have square note heads for one thing. We have this funny looking thing up front that's a clef. So this, I gave you the link to this at the very top of the chat. You could scroll back up, and it's a nice document that kind of explains these things. So it tells you that this is a clef. This funny looking two dot, these things that look like two notes maybe, that's actually a clef, a C clef, telling me that that top line is the note C. So that's how that thing works. If you ever see this other thing, it's a conglomeration of three notes, or three things that look like notes. That is an F clef. Yeah, that is an F clef. So that's telling you that this second to top line represents an F. And this is what turned into the modern bass clef, right? That's why it's got those two dots on it, because it's mimicking this style of clef. So in my experience, this C clef is the more common one. My experience, by the way, with medieval notation, not very good. So I know relatively little about it. I read about it. I see it from time to time, but I am by no means an expert or scholar. So if someone is, by all means, feel free to correct me. But I'm going to go with this. I'm going to create a 4-line staff and see if I can get one of these funny looking clefs on it, and then go from there. All right. So let's go back to MuseScore. And I'm going to create a new score because I don't want to mess this one up, but I'm going to by doing funny things. So again, this time I'm just going to say create from template treble clef. All right, so I just said treble clef, but of course I don't really want treble clef. I want a C clef. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my palettes and open the clefs palette and ask myself, well, first of all, none of the clefs on the regular clefs palette are what I want. There's a couple of C clefs here, but these are modern C clefs, and they're not really going high enough. Here we can see there are other clefs available, but none that look like the one that we're going for here. So what I'm going to have to do is add one clef to get things to work correctly, and then I'll see if I can find the symbol for that clef and add it. All right, so it's my 2 steps: the real clef that controls the playback, and then a symbol that hopefully looks like what I want. But before I mess with clefs, I got to turn this thing into a 4-line staff. So I'm going to right click that staff, as I've been doing many times, go to staff part properties. I'll go ahead and turn off time signature. And now where it says lines here, I want 4 lines. 4 lines. So I've got 4 lines. I also feel like I could be mistaken about this, but I feel like maybe the spacing of these lines is more than standard spacing. I'm not really sure if that's meant to be true or if it's just that they're using a larger staff. I'm not positive about that. But I think, yeah, you could go either way. But I'll right click this thing, and under staff part properties, there is a space for line distance, a setting for line distance. And if I increase that to 1 1/4, then this spaces the lines out a little bit more. You can make that be 1 1/2, you can make it be 2, make it be whatever you want. So maybe